Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're gonna wade into some pretty deep water.
Very deep.
We're talking about sexuality, and not just the act, but all the baggage, all the cultural static and secrecy and shame that can get wrapped up around it.
It's this huge natural part of being human, but for so many, it carries this really unnatural weight.
Yeah.
Our source material really digs into how these, moral or cultural pressures teach us to hide it or avoid it. And that lesson often starts so early, we just think it's part of our personality.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's not just a choice you make. It becomes this deep psychological conflict. You have a natural impulse clashing with a learned rule.
And that creates a kind of denial. The American Psychological Association actually has a term for it.
Sexual repression.
Exactly. It's the conscious or sometimes unconscious denial or avoidance of sexual feelings, thoughts, and even behaviors.
But it's important to frame this right. It's not a failing. Repression is, at its core, a survival mechanism, right?
100%. It shows up as guilt or shame or this fear of intimacy because at some point, your environment, your world, signaled that expressing that part of you was fundamentally unsafe.
So the mission for this deep dive is really just about self-reflection. It's not about judgment. It's about noticing where you might be, holding back.
Exactly. And the roadmap we're using is built around 12 core areas, which we can sort of group into that classic conflict,
Okay.
your internal world versus all the external forces.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's start with that internal war zone. Because when we say repression, we're often talking about a kind of cognitive dissonance.
The mental gymnastics.
The acrobatics you have to do to shut down a thought the moment it appears.
And that's the first place this shows up. Let's take something simple, like a sexual thought or a fantasy.
Uh-huh.
The assessment contrasts two reactions. One person immediately shuts it down, feels bad, guilty.
Right.
The other they can explore it or at least acknowledge it without shame. They see it's just a thought.
And that reaction, that shutting down, it instantly spills over into how you see the word desire itself.
Oh, absolutely. If repression is a factor, just hearing desire can bring up feelings of discomfort, guilt, like it's something wrong.
When the opposite is feeling empowerment or even just excitement.
Right. When desire is just a healthy, normal force, the internal conflict just isn't there. But repression makes that engine of human connection feel toxic.
And that toxicity often gets pointed inward, right at our own bodies.
Yes. The assessment looked at one's relationship to their own sensuality, to their body.
So are you ignoring it, trying to pretend it's not a source of pleasure?
Or treating it like a machine that just, causes trouble. The alternative is embracing it, seeing it as a source of joy. And that connects directly to self-pleasure.
That feels like the purest barometer here.
It really is. If there's avoidance or guilt around self-pleasure, that's a huge signpost. It means the mind is treating intimacy with yourself as something shameful.
You've basically taken the external message and made it your own. You've taken ownership of the shame.
So that's the internal battlefield. But then how does that war play out in the real world?
Yeah.
In our relationships?
Which brings us to the external barriers. And you have to start at the beginning, right? Upbringing.
The foundational messages. The assessment asks, was sex talked about as shameful? Or was it just silence?
Which is just as loud sometimes.
It is. That awkward avoidance creates shame just as powerfully as saying, this is bad.
And that foundation directly impacts your ability to even talk about it later.
Of course. If you were taught to suppress, you're going to find it almost impossible to talk about sex with a partner or even a trusted friend.
You avoid it or make jokes, anything but have a real conversation.
Yeah, well, on the other end of the spectrum is just openness, seeing it as a normal part of life to discuss.
And when you can't talk about it, that really affects intimacy in a relationship.
That's the paradox, isn't it? People who feel this often crave connection so badly.
But there's a wall.
A self-imposed psychological wall. You feel blocked, disconnected, even when you're physically close to someone.
And that block, it often comes down to this really profound question of permission.
Yes. Do you feel like you need permission to be sexual?
From who, though? Society? Religion?
Or even yourself? This internalized idea of being worthy.
Yeah.
The freedom comes when you realize, wait, I own my own body. Permission isn't part of the equation.
But we can't ignore the biggest external force of all, which is safety.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, the fear of judgment, rejection, or even actual danger, that's a powerful reason to hide.
It is. If your environment feels unsafe, then disconnecting is. It's a valid survival strategy. It has a heavy cost, but sometimes it's necessary.
Which actually leads us perfectly into the last part of this whole thing.
The synthesis.
Right. After exploring all these conflicts, the final question is just for you. What does being sexually free look like for you?
And the answers are all over the map. For some, it's still scary. For others, it's empowering. And that self-definition leads right into the results.
Yeah, these 5 key profiles, it's not just about a score, it's a snapshot of where you are and what the path forward might look like.
Okay, so let's start with the most suppressed pattern. This is the mostly A's, or the repressed with fear profile.
What's the core insight here?
What the assessment shows is that this person has had to disconnect just to feel safe. The fear isn't some abstract idea. It's a deeply wired psychological defense.
So the work here isn't about pushing through, it's about self-compassion.
Exactly. The key takeaway is this fear is not your fault, and your worth has nothing to do with how pure you are. The first step is just noticing the fear without judging it.
Okay, so moving along the spectrum, we get to mostly B's. Curious but cautious.
This is a really hopeful stage, actually. Healing has begun. There's curiosity.
But there's still that resistance.
Still that old guilt pulling you back. It's a tug of war.
But that tension is a sign of growth, right? You've broken the automatic denial.
It's a huge sign of growth. The takeaway here is to let curiosity be your guide, but don't rush. Healing isn't a race. It's a slow dance between the part of you that wants freedom and the part that learned to be afraid.
Next up, mostly C's. Awakening awareness.
This person is now actively self-reflecting. They're trying to reconnect with their body, their desires. There might still be tender spots, but they're choosing to move toward affirmation, not shame.
And the message for them.
That you're allowed to change. You're allowed to redefine yourself. Growth here can feel messy, but you're allowed to find joy in your body again.
So then we get to mostly D's, which sounds like the goal. Liberated, but still learning.
It is. This profile shows someone who has done a lot of that internal work, probably in a supportive environment, and they live pretty authentically without shame.
But still learning is a key part of that.
It is. Because freedom isn't a destination you just arrive at. It requires constant self-respect, clear boundaries, and balance. Being open doesn't mean being careless.
Right.
And finally, there is the one that probably fits most people in some way.
Mixed results.
The layered and evolving profile. This just confirms what it means to be human. You can be confident in one area and completely confused in another.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure, you might have a great body image, you feel confident in how you look. That's a D result. But privately, you have paralyzing performance anxiety or a lot of shame around self-pleasure. That's an A or B.
So you can hold both at once.
You can hold curiosity and fear, growth and joy, all at the same time. That layering is what makes you, well, beautifully whole. The confusion in one area doesn't cancel out the clarity in another.
So if we just step back for a second,
Yeah.
the big lesson from all this seems to be that this journey is just incredibly personal.
Deeply personal.
It's about honesty with yourself. It's not about trying to fit someone else's idea of what free is supposed to look like.
And that self-reflection is so important for your overall emotional health. Repression doesn't just stay in one box. It affects your creativity, your intimacy, your sense of aliveness,
Giving yourself permission to want.
and permission to feel. It's the ultimate act of psychological hygiene, really.
We've spent this whole time talking about the denial, the shame, the things you're not letting yourself feel, so we want to leave you with a thought.
A final prompt for your own reflection.
Think about one small, safe impulse, a curiosity, a desire, maybe just a gentle acknowledgement of your own body that you usually shut down. What tiny, safe action can you take today to just allow that feeling to exist for a moment without immediately slapping on that old rule of shame?